I have the privilege to introduce Charles. I'm Deb Kraus. I'm the president of the seminary, and this is a really great opportunity for me. Charles Kniker has served as the president of Eden Seminary. He was our 12th president. And Charles and I had a conversation about a year and a half ago about a book he was writing. And it's a book on spirituality. And I was so delighted to hear that, because you don't hear of many seminary presidents and professors of education, which Charles also has served as at Iowa State University, who write books on spirituality. But that's exactly what we need now. Are all of us thinking about how our spiritual lives are connected to the world and to struggles for justice and building community. And in his book, Spirituality That Makes a Difference, Charles Kniker has done just that through storytelling, through weaving his own biography and the stories of others, and showing how God's life intersects with our lives in our communities to create meaning and purpose and to build community and justice. And so Eden Seminary is a seminary that is committed to what we call spiritual and vocational resilience in the formation of our students and in the ministries of our alumni. And this is a book that is right down that alley. So Charles, congratulations. This is your 6th book, 7th book, okay. Author of 7 books. Well, that sounds a little like perfection or completion, but don't stop, keep it going. Also the founding editor of Religion and Education, a journal that is now international in its scope, connected with many different universities and countries, and just in its 50th year of publication. So quite a legacy of writing, of scholarship, of advocacy in the ministry and profession of Eden's 12th president and our dear friend, Charles Kniker. Charles, come up. He's going to share from his book. And then after that, we're going to have an opportunity for buying books, always a good thing to do. The Eden bookstore is here. Scott Hall, our director, is here with books. And we invite you to purchase books and also to visit the bookstore when you have a chance during your time here. So please help me welcome Charles Kniker.
Thank you very much, Deb. As Deb was implying, there are a lot of anniversaries this year as I thought about it. I'm cheating a little on the first one. I graduated from this institution in 1962. Actually 63, 60 years ago. 50 years ago, why? And I'll tell you a little bit more about this in terms of personal background. But I was at Iowa State University and I felt the area of religion and education wasn't being covered. And so I started it in a much different format and started this and was told several weeks ago, guess what? This is now 50 years old. And then it was 30 years ago that I came in the fall of 93 to become president here. Surprise invitation. So a lot of background that way. Now, when I came, Deb was starting her 2nd year as a faculty member here. And not too long after, she had Izzy, her first daughter, and my wife Eleanor and I hosted a faculty party on the porch of the president's home. So there was, I think, not a strange reason, but I had an inkling that when David Greenaw retired, a certain professor might be named president. Now, when you were when you were called to be president, I was tempted to call you with two stories about being a president. The first one is about seminaries, and I heard this before I came here. And the story was a riddle from seminary students. How is our president different from God? And the answer was, God is everywhere. Our president is everywhere but here. Related. Fundraising. Now, another story I've heard, a friend was honored to be named president of an academic institution, and a good friend advised him. He said, don't get too blown over by that. Yes, it's an honor. But he said, being president of an academic institution is very much like being superintendent of a cemetery. You have a lot of people underneath you, but nobody's listening. Okay. Believable, right? Well, let's go back just for a moment or two, if I could. When I was invited to come back, this is a special place of holy ground. And I think some of you in those can relate and are already relating to what Eden can provide. And I just want to bring a few names to mind that come from my 60 years. And I think why it changed who I am, what I'm doing, why I wrote this book, in fact. When I was a student here, a German pastor named Martin Niemöller, if you don't know who he was, about resisting the German occupation, I had the privilege of driving him back to the airport, and we had a wonderful conversation. When I was here as a student, a Lutheran pastor from the Chicago area, Granger Westberg, was a speaker. Again, he was a pioneer in hospital chaplaincy and helping to start a movement that was called Parish Nurse Program. And if some of you, I see head shaking, and you're not falling asleep already. No, that organization is having its meeting starting on Monday here. It's now, I think, called Faith Community Nursing. And I do mention them in the book too. Later on, when I came back, we had Jeremiah Wright here. We had the Jesus Seminar represented. Borg and Crossan were here. We talked at the table about Harold Schultz being here many years ago. So some of these names don't mean some, but you get the point. This institution, and I should mention our faculty members, Elmer Arndt and Alan Miller and Hap Flug and with Christian education. I could go on, and Lee Wiston. Lee was the one who really got me into prophetic ministry, if you will. All right. Well, I want to skip on because that really gets to the point, because I want to keep it short. I know you have other things to do, and I do want to do the autographing. And by the way, the autographs are free. But why did I write this book? So there are 4 questions here. Why write it? Who is it for? Why the title? And what about the future of spiritual communities? Now, I might start with one other little overview. As I've got into, I have to share. I've told you enough about Eden that really got me started as a minister. I served a church in North St. Louis. And then I might say this too. I have to tell you this. My grandfather was a minister for whom I'm named. He was 50 years in the ministry. I had uncles who were there, an aunt who married a minister, another aunt who worked for Eden Publishing House as a curriculum writer. It was a disease, and I inherited that disease. I always knew I wanted to be a minister, no doubt about it. And so it was in the stars or whatever. It was going to be Elmhurst, Eden, eternity. All right. And I talked to one German immigrant to this country who became a minister. And when I told him I was planning on coming to Eden, he said Eden to him was paradise. Paradise. It was paradise, as you might get from my feelings about this institution. But most of you don't know this. A few of you do. I'd married my college sweetheart from Elmhurst. We were here. I was in my second year. She died 7 months after we were married of acute leukemia. And I took I call it my wilderness year, to Honduras. And because of that year, I felt a special second calling to go into educational work, which I then did. I served that church and then got a doctorate in religion and education, and ended up strangely in Iowa, which I won't call paradise right now. But I ended up, it was 24 years, and then before being called back here. Okay. While there, then I really had the chance, as I said, to start the journal, but to really ask that question again. Well, in a sense, what is life about? How do you deal with bad things that happen to good people? And so eventually this book came out, and it's taken me over 20 years to finally put this one together, over 20 years. And partly it goes back, as I call it, my new pew view. As an academic for 24 years, I could kind of sit back and watch what was happening and what had been happening and has been happening in this country. From I'd say the 50s to the 70s, we had pretty large church growth, Gallup polls and all of that, right? And suspicious about church attendance, average church attendance. But it was up there, right? But it was starting to go down. And then we go into a period, for many reasons we can analyze, where the end term was, I'm spiritual but not religious. Okay? We're moving past that now. The latest polls, and the ones I read again and again when I was doing my research, interviews, et cetera, are that we now have a none movement. I'm none of the above. I am not religious. I am not spiritual. I don't want to belong to anything, 88%. Don't put me in a religious community. But having said that, again, does it really make a difference if you're that kind of spiritual anymore? And one beautiful book has it called correctly. The title is Back Pocket God. The evidence is people can't really explain what they mean by spirituality. Okay, I'm going to throw in another one. One great book by Elaine Desher calls it, people will, even when they say, I'm not really spiritual, but they recognize something out there. And she calls it the 4 F's. When you are with family, at times something happens. When you are with friends, something can happen. When you're with food, something can happen. And then when you're with Fido, your pet. But the book that I really like is called Back Pocket God. So what people mean is, well, if I'm really in trouble, I'm going to dial God. Get the quick answer. That's spirituality that doesn't make a difference. So one thing I did, and it took me longer to get that done and processed, is I found examples of people who are engaged. And I use the word transformative spirituality. What is spirituality that makes a difference? So that's why I did the book. Now that second question, who's it for? I have 3 audiences, again, based on there are certain reasons this came about. I think it's college age, the emerging adults, 18 to 29-year-olds. And my contact, and I had wonderful interaction with her, Sharon Dulles Parks at Harvard University. She's now retired. She's considered the expert on college students. She said they are searching. And her classic book, 3rd edition, I advise you to get it. It's called Big Questions, Worthy Dreams. That age group is asking the big questions. And they are also saying, in addition to who am I, what am I about, what are my gifts, they're saying, what can I make? What can I do for the world in a positive way? Worthy dreams. But she boils the word spirituality, if you will, the concept down to meaning making. Meaning making. Religion is about to. Okay. So I think that was maybe a primary audience. The second one, and I talked to a professor at Garrett about this one, who deals with what we call the midlife survivors, successful in life. Something is missing. He said the word that keeps coming up for him, transcendence. Something else to life we're missing out on. And then guess what? People, my generation are a little younger. By the way, I think I'm pretty good for 86. Okay. Some of us have been stayers, but we don't really like that institution we're part of. It's changed on us. We feel pushed out. And someone has even called them refugees. Some of us older ones are refugees. So those are the three audiences I've written for. Okay, now, why that title? Well, let's go back to spirituality. If you buy what Sharon Parks calls it, meaning making, where do we learn our meanings? All right, isn't it in our home first? Who am I? Who are you? Who can you trust? Right? And do you realize, and Sharon pointed this out, and I still confirmed it, the single most powerful word in the English language is home. Home. Why is home that powerful? I think it's because, number one, in my book, I'll say, I think it gives you comfort. And that includes security, the roof, the food, whatever, right? Support. And that's why we really like home and we like to go back. And granted, I'm saying healthy home, right? But even sometimes when we have an unhealthy home, we want to show them we're right. We want to get back, right? There's so much literature on that. Home is so important for meaning making. And then we get the circles, the friends, the peers, the institutions, including churches, synagogues, mosques. They give us meaning. But is that all homes give us? No. Healthy homes also confront you, and that's a deliberate word, not challenge. Confront you. Confront means face to face, speaking boldly. Look up your dictionary. A healthy home will confront you. Well, who are your friends? Can't you do more than that? Okay. Now, see, we all tend to think confront is always negative. No, it can be, hey, mom, dad got a new job opportunity. Well, we have to make a decision, right? All right. That's why I think home is the place to start. And my first title for the book was actually because guess what? Guess what? You can have a spiritual home. What other institution do you happen to know about that can also offer you comfort and confrontation? Church. And I have to confess, the first title as I said was Finding Your Spiritual Home. And frankly, I was thinking about my first purpose, my first draft of the book was writing it to get you to go back to your mom and pop's church. Now, how successful would that be? See, right? And that's one reason I got rid of the word religion. I've had too many airline conversations and other conversations where you mention religion, the wall is there. Spirituality is still open. And even that's coming under. Oh, but you see where it's going. Okay. All right, maybe I should end here because I've probably talked enough, but I'll have open for questions. But let me say this much now. The first 4 chapters talk about how we get our meanings. The last 4 talk about healthy spiritual communities. The teacher in me says, if you want to say yes, and even discipleship, which I'm glad to see Eden doing. If Jesus asks you to be a disciple, or if a church or community wants to have you, or a group wants you to be part of it, and you want to say, yes, I do want to be a part. Y stands for yearning. I say worship. Don't we yearn for something? You better have a vibrant worship. And okay. E, I'm going to say word yes. E is education. I like to use the word learning, lifelong learning. Don't disciples learn and not, we all know the joke about the best way to get rid of people is baptize and confirm them. You'll never see them again. No, if we want to keep people, right, lifelong learning. The first S, I thought I'd done it, but Clint and Deb, I thought I'd come up with a new word, soul care. Take care of your own soul, right? Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Soul care, caring for others. Harold, our friend Harold. Soul care. Have to be about that. And then last, service. And by the way, the three things I put under service, I picked out 3 issues. Do you think these still make sense? I think a healthy spiritual community must deal with climate, migration. And by the way, here's a story. The church I belong to in Ames, Iowa, that was 700 members, went to 400 over its time, 180 now. We are in our 38th year of offering a weekend event we call Theologian in Residence. We've just done, last time it was on climate. This will be immigration at the border. Miguel de la Torre. He will also speak at Iowa State. I think churches might be surprised about what you can do when you want to get after these issues. But we have to serve. And Reinhold Niebuhr comes to mind, right? That line about loving justice. That's what communities, healthy spiritual communities need to be about. All right, let me end by saying 2 things. Having taught in schools, I ran across a quote, so I wish it were mine. A definition of a school is a building with 4 walls and students inside who are preparing for tomorrow. Eden Seminary, are you building, praying for tomorrow? And I leave you with this question. And this is the challenge, because I can criticize the church like all of you. Remember, I talked about mom and dad churches. Are we preparing mom and dad answers for big box world of questions? Are we really speaking to that world and really responding? I hope my book does some of that. Okay. Thank you very much.